welcome back to the channel. My name is Frank, and today we're here at Long Island Sports Cars, or Aston Martin and McLaren of Long Island, bringing you a different kind of video. We're bringing you a rivalry, a versus, a new age versus old age kind of video and review. You see, I have two very special cars with me here today. Two very rare cars, very good and well-kept example cars, and well, two really fun cars. This is the 2021 V8 Vantage manual, and to the left of me is a 2016 V8 Vantage manual. Let's go ahead and let's get into the review on both of these beautiful cars. Getting into the review on both of these Aston Martin V8 Vantages, we're going to go ahead and start on the previous generation. So the previous generation V8 Vantage came out in about 2005, extending all the way up to 2017 when the new age and the new design was introduced, featuring a full interior exterior redesign. So going on to the left side, we see the major differences between a previous and a newer generation. The previous ones look kind of all the same. So the V8 Vantage features very similar characteristics to other cars of the same era, such as the DB9, the Vanquish, the DBS, and everything like that. They kind of all share a very similar front end, whereas the newer generations are pretty different in terms of them, and looking at them side by side, you can tell the difference between a Vantage to a DB11 to a DBS. And with the new introduction of the DB12, again, it kind of looks different in its own sense with newer designed headlights. So going on and starting on the left side with the Vantage, you can see we have that very signature Aston Martin look. We have this front end grille featuring flat black with a lower lip that is also finished in flat black. We have two parking sensors on the front and those signature Aston Martin headlights on here with almost this kind of jewel design and diamond design running down here. In the center of this car, you're going to see the Aston Martin wings in there, which are finished in that Aston Martin British Racing green color, and the exterior color on this one is going to be your China gray. Now underneath the hood of the 2016 Aston Martin V8 Vantage is the 4.7 liter V8. It's a really good sounding motor in my opinion. I like the way that it sounds, and this has made it to a 6-speed manual transmission. And now the 4.7 liter V8 has about 430 horsepower with 361 pound-feet of torque, and it's a rear-wheel drive car, so all of that torque and horsepower propels this car from 0 to 60 in about 4.2 seconds. So it's not the fastest car on the planet. However, again, it is a 6-speed manual transmission, and that's probably all you need in terms of a car like this. Now moving on to the newer generation V8 Vantage, it's a whole nother story and a whole nother animal. You can see we have a completely new design. The only kind of similarity between both generations is going to be the front end grille on here, which is somewhat similar. So the front end grille on here is again very large. This one is finished in gloss black along with a gloss black lower front end lip. You can see we have a brand new headlight design that came out in the 2018 generation. So we have this brand new design, which again shows no kind of similarity to the previous generation. In the center, we do have the optioned out kind of carbon fiber designed Aston Martin wings on here as well. And so the exterior color on the 2021 Vantage right here is the ceramic blue. It is extremely metallic-y and pearly. The sparkle and flake in here is incredible. Honestly, it is a great color for a great car. Now coming up a little bit onto the hood, you can see a major difference between both of the generations. The hood on this car is so much wider than the previous generation Aston Martin. Putting them side by side, just the sheer width of the car in general compared to the previous generation is insane. And again, it's something that Aston Martin kind of put into their design, making it a little bit more aggressive, making it a little bit more wider. Now, this car does not have a 6-speed manual transmission. This one has a 7-speed manual transmission. Now, in the newer generation Aston Martin Vantages, you're going to have a significant power boost and power bump compared to the previous generation. Underneath the newer generation is going to be that twin-turboed V8 that's shared with the Mercedes-AMG. It is a phenomenal motor. It sounds great in my opinion. It burbles and crackles like no other. This one features that V8, and again, that is 503 horsepower underneath the hood and 505 pound-feet of torque. So especially on that torque side, it is a significant difference compared to the previous generation. So moving on just past the hood on both of these cars, which again is drastically different from the size to where the hood vents for the motor are placed. You can see these are much narrower and these are much wider, along with the front end difference. We're going to be talking and going down to the wheels on both of these cars. So starting off on the newer generation, our front ends are going to be 255 by 40 by 20. As you can see, we have the carbon fiber center caps on here as well. These are an added option. Standard disc brakes with slots in them. And these wheels are also the textured black wheels, which are again an added option. And now moving on to the 2016, these front wheels are again going to have now red calipers, and they're going to have slotted rotors. And these tires are going to be 245 by 40 by 19, so a little bit smaller than the newer generation. Now, just past those wheels are these front kind of fender flare areas. The previous generation has this very iconic look of this large piece of chrome going down the center with a vent right in there and an indicator just underneath there. Coming over to the newer generation, you can see they completely scrapped that whole design. We have this kind of metal hexagon shape right here as the vent. Again, and this fender flare that flows directly into it with no form of indicator light anywhere on this side. And just past that, you can see how the fender really flows into the driver's side door on here. It is a really nice look, whereas the previous generation just has this one little area on here, and there's not too much design going on the side of the door. And now just above that on the newer generation, we have this beautifully designed side view mirror that sticks out and looks so elegant. And when we come over to the previous generation, you can see it has a very nice kind of design on the lower portion, but a more of a standard look on the side mirror cap on here. And now in terms of access into the car, they're both going to be the same. They have the same style door handle as each other, where you push down on one side opens up and it allows you to open the door fully. And again, the same thing is going to be on this side, where you push in on one side, you pull up and it allows you to open the door that way. Now moving slowly on back, you can see the previous generation has a much more smoother body line on the rear end, much less aggressive than its younger brother. On the rear end, we do have the same kind of wheels back here. However, these are going to be 285 by 35 by 19s. And on the newer generation, you can see how much more aggressive it is, especially with that taillight design and the new rear end design, how it flows into that rear end of the car. And back here is going to be significantly wider at 295 by 35 by 20s. Rear end of both of these cars, you can see just how different they both are. Starting off on the 2016, we have the more traditional Aston Martin rear end look. You can see we have the kind of signature Aston Martin taillights. The center is finished in that china gray color as well. We have your Aston Martin logo right here, and the button to get into the trunk, which is this tiny little metal button that you give a click to, and this opens right up. And now just below that, you can see we have the rear end back here in the lower portion. We have one exhaust pipe on each side. We have this kind of flat black center area. We have where your license plate goes, and this lower kind of diffuser finish in that china gray color as well. Honestly, not too much going on back here that would make it kind of stand out from the crowd. Now moving on to the newer generation, you can see how much of a drastic difference we have back here with this brand new kind of taillight design where it flows up and down into each side. It looks great, especially at nighttime. Just below that, we have that black carbon fiber style Aston Martin badge on there, and we have the words of Aston Martin spelt out on this one, whereas the other one we do not. Just below that, we have two exhaust pipes on each side instead of just one singular one. We have a gloss black finish area on the rear bumper going down, giving it a super aggressive look, and we do have a rear diffuser on here finished in that same ceramic blue color. It looks so aggressive. It makes this car look phenomenal from the rear end. Now, of course, this video wouldn't be complete without hearing a cold start from both sides. So let's go ahead, let's jump into the previous generation first and give that a cold start and hear what it sounds like, and then let's jump into the newer generation, hear what that one sounds like. Guys, so now both of these cars are obviously forms of daily drivers, so let's see how practical they both are. Starting off on the newer generation, we don't have a button on the outside. Instead, we have to use the key, or there is a button on the inside of the car for you to release the trunk. So coming on to this one, you can see we have, again, direct access into the kind of cockpit of the car. We have a little bit of a storage area right here, and then the main trunk area is right here. This car also is optioned out and has the Aston Martin umbrella, which is tucked away in here if you are ever stuck in the rain. It's a decent amount of space in here. Nothing too crazy, but in terms of a car like this, it's definitely enough to store some weekend bags in or groceries or anything like that. Now, in order to close the newer generation's trunk, you have a leather strap right here that you can wrap your hand in, simply pull down on it, and it will close for you. Just like that. Coming on to the previous generation, you can see it is a similar style back here. However, we do have a privacy screen right here and no direct access into this, like there's no like little storage area right here. Instead, you have an area in there, which again, you can reach from there into here. However, it's only going to be directly behind the seats. That's it. Now in here, we have a kind of similar style space. It's very deep in here. You do have an access in here, but there is nothing you can reach from when you're inside of the car itself. We do have a couple of little items and bags in here that are tucked away on the side, and that's really it. Now, in order to close this trunk, we have a leather strap that hangs down instead. So instead of wrapping your hand through it, you have a little kind of pull tab right here that you use to just simply pull down and let go, and then it closes for you. Now let's go ahead and let's jump inside of both of these cars and see one of the major differences, which in this case is the interior and infotainment section. All right, guys, we are inside of the 2016 Aston Martin Vantage. Now, starting off when you're in here, it does feel dated, I will be honest. However, it does feel good at the same time. Again, it is Aston Martin, so they had pretty good quality when they were making their cars back then, but it is definitely dated for a 2016 car. What this car has compared to other cars that were not even in the same league, such as, you know, Audi and stuff like that, the interior in here definitely feels dated. All right. So with that being said, there is only one thing that you really need in this car, and that I'm sure you're getting this car for, and that is this beautiful centerpiece right here. That's right, this is the 6-speed right in the center of this car, and it looks great in here. When you first get into the car, you're greeted with the steering wheel. It's a circular steering wheel. Again, it does kind of look dated and it feels a little dated, but it is what it is. We have analog gauges right in front of you. There's nothing digital in there besides it telling you what gear you're in. And that's really it. Coming onto the center area, you are greeted with this ginormous piece of like piano black finish center console area that has some buttons put in here and a little screen that folds up when you start the car. So when you put power onto the car, this little screen that is the main infotainment screen pops up and has options in there such as your vehicle settings, your audio, your phone call, and anything like that you may need. And when you turn the car off, it folds back down, creating this very flush gloss black, piano black finish center console area that goes all the way down. On the center area in here, you're going to have a couple of buttons. The main ones are going to be your hazards, which are obviously in the center. You have your traction control button, and you do have a sport mode button in here as well. Now, just before that, again, is this beautiful 6-speed manual transmission right in here. It feels great. It does sound nice, and I really like the feeling of it. When you shift into gear, it feels really nice. It feels very crisp. The clutch on here as well feels very good. I'm not too sure when the clutch was last done on this car. This car has 16,900 miles, so it is a relatively young car in terms of mileage goes. The seats are plain. They're very, very, very comfortable, and that's what Aston Martin is known for, but the design factor on them, I would give a 4 out of 10 because they're very basic looking. They are all black, and you have this red stitching just running kind of throughout it, and that's really it. Not my personal taste on seat design, but you know what, they get the job done. They're very comfortable at the end of the day. So you do have this little bit of an opening in between the seats, and that's really it. Now, one thing to note on this car that is not in the other generation one is this one still features an actual emergency brake on the side that you pull up and down. So Aston Martin, what they did is when you first get into the car, instead of a normal emergency brake on a car being on the right side and you pulling it up, when you come in, it is actually on your left side. So when you come in, it allows you to pull it up, and then you engage the emergency brake, and what it does is while it's still engaged, instead of sitting up like in a normal car, it's able to be pushed back down, so you're able to exit the car without hitting your leg on it or moving it or anything like that. Let's go ahead though, and let's jump back outside of the car and let's see what the newer generation has, and then let's talk about the price tag on both of these cars. Now, these both are pre-owned, but they obviously are Aston Martins at the end of the day, so they do have a pretty price tag still. All right, guys, so now we are inside of the newer generation V8 Vantage, and it feels really good in here compared to the previous generation. I will be honest, it feels like all of the kind of other newer generation cars, but the newer generation doesn't feel dated, thankfully. So when you're first entering the car, you're greeted with a ton of leather. The whole car is wrapped in leather from front end to back end, with pretty much no other type of material in here except for this piano black finish and Alcantara, which is occasionally put in here. So first thing to note when you're getting into the car, this one has a manual transmission obviously in it too. It is right here in the center, but this one is a 7-speed instead of the previous, which is a 6-speed. So it feels really nice. This one is also wrapped in leather like the other one, and that's really the kind of only similarity in this car between both of them. Otherwise, everything else inside and out is completely different. We have a brand new steering wheel design, which is a kind of square shaped design. We have buttons on here to engage your sport mode and your sport suspension, along with different toggles and stuff like that, so you can control everything. Instead of an analog gauge cluster, we do have a fully electronic gauge cluster in here with a brand new infotainment design in the center, which again features previous generation AMG technology inside of here. When you're engaging different sport modes in this car, everything including the screen will change. So when you are engaging normal sport mode, everything will turn red, and so on until you go back to your standard comfort mode. Coming onto the center screen, again, it's not as dated. It is a little dated though compared to other cars that were coming out in 2021 like this one was. However, at least they did a better job than they did in the previous generation. Just below that, we have a bunch of other buttons because this car loves buttons. We have different ones such as parking sensor, your cameras, your radio, your media. Everything is controlled through these right here, along with your traction control, your auto start and stop, and that's really it. The center area right in here is where you're going to be able to control that screen in the center with a dial right here and a little touch screen that is right here that you're able to touch different things with and slide your hand around. Now, these seats again are also not the best thing in the world, but they did do definitely a better job with them in my opinion. We have an Aston Martin embroidered logo into the seat rest back here. The whole car inside is featured just in black. There's no other kind of contrasting stitching running through the car. The whole car is just black. We do also have heated and cooled seats in this car as compared to the previous generation. One thing to also note on the newer generation is that instead of having your little area right here where your emergency brake would be, they did scrap that completely, and you do have a single button in here which engages and disengages your parking brake when you park the car. Now, in terms of clutch feeling and everything like that, this car does feel very nice. It does feature a really nice gear selector in my opinion. It's pretty meaty. It's good enough for you to really grab onto and be able to control well while you're driving this car, which again is a nice little feature. Now, seating placement in this car is definitely different than the previous generation. You feel a lot lower in here in my opinion compared to that one, just because of the overall dashboard and the steering wheel and everything like that. Everything is a little taller in here and you feel a little bit lower compared to that one. Both of them also do not feature a glove box, which is just an Aston Martin kind of standard thing. And now, with that being said, and with that being the general overview of both of these interiors in the cars, let's go ahead, let's jump back outside and let's talk about the price tag on both of them. All right guys, so let's go ahead and let's talk about the price of these two cars, and let's wrap wrap up this video after that. Let's go ahead and let's talk about the price on the 2016. So this one is currently being offered for sale, about 16,000 miles. It is currently being offered at $93,000 just about. So it is still a pretty penny, but it is a 2016 at the end of the day, and it doesn't have too many miles on it in terms of Aston Martin goes. And along with that, it is extremely rare, being that it is a 6-speed manual transmission V8 Vantage. And now just besides that is the older brother. We have the 2021 Aston Martin Vantage Coupe. This one has only 1,000 miles on it, again featuring that ceramic blue color, which is absolutely beautiful in person and in the sunlight. This one is currently going for $170,000, which is crazy, but it is a 2021 and it is extremely rare to get a newer generation with a manual transmission. They did not make a lot of these cars from the factory. So if you would like this one as well, it is located here at Long On Sports Cars. I'll put the listing to both of these cars directly in the link below so that you can check them out for yourself. All right, guys, and that's going to wrap up today's video on the comparison between an old generation and a new generation manual Aston Martin V8 Vantage. So now that begs the answer to the question that I asked in the beginning, and that's which one is better. Well, in my opinion, I would honestly probably still pick the previous generation Aston Martin Vantage for, well, one reason and one reason only, and that's because it's when Aston Martin was still really owned by themselves and they designed cars with their own team instead of having outside influences like AMG. I am sure that this car is still an amazing car to drive, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be extremely similar to driving an AMG, whereas this one is going to be your real feel Aston Martin. However, they both have their pros and cons to each one, and honestly, if I could have both of them, I still would at the end of the day. But in the current time, I would probably still get this one, especially being at almost $100,000 cheaper than this one. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap up today's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed the comparison between these two generations, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when I post next, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Take care.
Double hiding, ego, and pride. All this weight on your mind is a little time. It will come a day, you will pay the price.